Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And today I'm joined by previous guest, choreographer and dancer Himadri Madan. Hello, Himadri.
Hi, Alistair. How are you?
I'm really well, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about the gaze, you, me, us, and them, which is described as a new interactive installation with live performances, and it's going to premiere at the Tramway in Glasgow on the 22nd of November. And then it'll be through in Edinburgh on the 28th of February, is that right?
That's right. Yes.
The studio at Capitol Theatre. So there's a lot to unpick there. First of all, that's a very brief description, but can you kind of expand on it and tell us about the gaze, you, me, us, and them?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to make sure that I'm coherent because I think this project has changed so much with time.
Oh, really?
So essentially, this was something that I started as a research project when I was doing my master's in choreography. And initially, it was just a live performance, but the films were something that I was doing as part of the R&D during the pandemic. So most of the films came in because films was my only medium of reaching my supervisor, showing them stuff, and then suddenly the films started becoming a very important part of it. The themes initially were just about structural boundaries in Indian classical dance because it was more of a academic research I was doing in terms of my practice. But in another project, which actually we spoke to you about, Maiden Mother
Yeah.
Whore, we were reading something called Draupadi by an author named Mahashweta Devi. And that kind of really goes into the idea of shame about how bodies are viewed by the society and how sometimes shame is used as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And Draupadi by itself is a very commonly known name because it comes from the epic Mahabharata in Indian mythology or Hindu mythology mostly. And that's again the most commonly told story is about violence against Draupadi that happens in a court full of men.
Right.
So it's been something that I've grown up with. Also, like sort of always questioning that why is it something in mythology that's not really unpicked or questioned as much. At least it wasn't when I was young. I know more and more people have started questioning those things now in through media. And taking that aspect of the story, the mythological aspect of it, and as well as the aspect from Mahashweta Devi's book, which was actually a contemporary retelling, it goes in the story of an indigenous woman and police brutality. So all of those things kind of started changing how I was looking at my project.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's probably not just about me and it's not just about how I feel in Indian classical dance, but this can be something that is far and wide and an experience that I can share with a larger audience. So that's how gaze started becoming what it is right now. It used to be called Inside Out during my master's, and then the change of the name and everything happened. And then what I wanted was to not have just a passive audience that hears the story from my perspective, an audience that comes in. So we have an interactive installation where the audience gets to walk through something that I consider is almost like Draupadi's own space
Okay.
and how she has become the person that she's become, how she has felt the gaze on her body, and how she's responding to that with multiple things. So it's basically her room and how it's placed, with trying to think of the right word, but it's more like the makeup products, the measuring tapes, the things that you've heard from the society, the little things that have left on her, the amount of clothes that lie around us in trying to thinking whether do we fit into this, do we not fit into this, what do we wear when we are where, like all those kind of things. And plus it goes into the films. So the
Right.
films are sort of again an insight into Draupadi, the character that you're listening the story from, in her experiences of being watched, being experienced, and you see that through the camera lens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the camera is the gaze on her as she is living and just being. And as that happens, the audience also gets a chance to come in front of a mirror and probably, if they want, write about things that they feel has been left on their bodies and experiences and what they feel under the gaze. Moving on from that, we come to the live performance, which is essentially Draupadi with her musician friend, and this Draupadi is a dancer and a choreographer who's also questioning all the narratives that she performs, is having this conversation with her friend, and you watch them sort of unpick all of these themes through their art form, and that's where it goes.
It's so interesting, because you mentioned that part of it has come from mythology. I mean, how long ago would those myths come from? Talking ancient?
They're ancient, and I think it's very contested as to how far away those mythologies were, right? Um, but I would say that they have at least been around for, like, I know that there have been transitions that happened in 15th century, 16th century, and they were rewritten. Obviously, mythologically, or the timeline that they say, it's probably in, I don't know, like before Christ era,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? So, yeah, I can't really comment on how old are those mythologies
I
to be
guess what I'm
accurate.
getting at is that the relevance of what you're talking about today and bringing in the idea of film and camera and even mirrors, that it's a, despite it being ancient, the kind of impact or the ideas are still relevant today.
Absolutely. In some sense, it's also sad that they're relevant
Mhm.
today,
Mhm.
because I wish we had moved on from being under societal gaze constantly, and I wish we had moved on from shame, especially shame in women being used as a weapon, and violence against women being used as a weapon. But unfortunately, we have not. So I suppose there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to fight about. More like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it might be interesting to kind of break down the title because the idea of the gaze, and it's interesting that that wasn't the original title that you
Yeah.
put it. I mean, we all think, the idea of the male gaze in particular is one which, we've all come to kind of discuss and know what it means. And so is it more specific than that, or is it a general idea that the gaze is kind of ever present? And then you've got you, me, us, and them, which is everyone, really.
Yeah. So I think the idea of gaze, especially in the beginning, was more about me reading about male gaze theory in cinema, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, from the academic perspective of writing my theses and research. But the more I started doing it, I think you summarized it quite well. The gaze exists between all of us, and I think there is always this concept of being watched, feeling like we're being watched, or even sometimes we are unconsciously watching others in a maybe scrutinizing way, even if it's not a judgmental way, but it exists. So, which is why I think for me it became a broader sense of being in the society where we are constantly watched. And maybe it's not just our physical bodies. Sometimes, like at this point, it's even our political ideas. It's even who we support when and where. So all of those things sort of have become part of being watched. So that's why kind of just kept it as the gaze, not specifying what that gaze means and where is it coming from.
And you mentioned film and camera, and of course now everyone has a camera. Not everyone, but the vast majority of people have a
Yeah,
camera in their pocket. They can film. They can, all of those things, and that really is a case where you feel that you're maybe always
yeah,
being watched.
absolutely. Yes. And also, I think the world of social media, especially in terms of arts, I do feel like we are constantly more under a microscope than we ever used to be before. Like, probably if I was in a live performance and if I did not do one step to my best ability, I would not have it haunting me as much as I would now that it's documented, it's being shared, and it's being promoted, and it's going further out. So, yeah,
It's really, absolutely, and even what we're doing now. I originally, when we did podcasts, it was all audio only. There was no such thing as
yeah,
being able to do this. It wasn't there, so it didn't really matter what you turned up in, but whatever. But there is at the end, you think, well, I am going to be on camera.
yeah,
So there is. I mean, I've had people come on who have said, "Oh, I didn't realize I was going to be on camera. Can you give me 10 minutes?" And then so
absolutely,
these
yeah.
are all pressures, aren't they?
They're all the societal pressures. And also, maybe, I don't know, there are probably times that these are so internalized that even if maybe your audience is not looking at it in the same way as you are, but we are living with that internalized gaze even on ourselves constantly. So yeah, we essentially are living in a very conditioned world. And I think also the important part with this for me was not to preach to be like, oh, you can come out of it or whatever. I think it's just knowing that we all probably feel the same. We all are probably part of it, and maybe there is an ideal world case scenario where we don't feel it, but it does not exist right now.
Yeah.
It's far beyond our years.
And actually, that feeds into this idea of shame and weaponizing shame, as you said, that people might now, they are able to, and a lot of people do, go looking for things that can be seen as shameful or to shame someone
Mm,
for either personal reward or to attack the person that they're looking to do. And that's never been greater, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yes, but also there is a lot of reclaiming that is happening in terms of a lot of the terms, a lot of things. So I suppose the shame has become a big discourse around us. Sometimes in a positive sense, sometimes in a more violent sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, there is still the discourse, I suppose. Yeah.
Um, are there inspirations behind the gaze? And for instance, the themes you had, and perhaps if it goes back to your original work, what was it that inspired you to kind of undertake that?
So I think initially all of this started as like an autoethnography. It was very personal when I was doing the research. And it was even when I was just working as like the topic was the structural boundaries of Indian classical dance, it was to kind of deconstruct all the internalized things that I have as a performer. And they come from the culture of my training. They come from the worlds that I grew up in. There are things that I've heard and I've lived with. So one of the things that has still transferred from inside out as is to the gaze is the idea of body writing. So there are things and words written on my body which represent sort of things that I've heard, things that I've been told. And for the longest time, they were kind of internalized inside myself. Even things like shame, even things like honor of being the woman and having to really take care of myself
Yeah.
and my body being like something that is like almost an object that needs to be protected. So I think those kind of things were also very valid in my experience of being on stage as an Indian classical dancer. And then when it translated to being a wider experience, I think that still comes. That experience of myself feeling like I'm under the gaze all the time. Probably less so right now, because I think doing this for last 6 years, because it started in 2019, I have sort of therapized myself sort of out of that slightly, but obviously it's a long journey to come out of those feelings. And the more I looked at it, the more I also realized how perceptible or like how gullible I am in terms of media.
Right.
How I would really buy products because I felt they're going to do what they're saying they're going to do.
Yeah.
Or how advertisements could really convince me that there is something wrong with me. So all of those things, very personal, which I don't think are just my experiences, was something that I brought into the space. And they were the sort of the inspirations, along with the texts, like along with Draupadi, along with some of the songs that I'm using in the piece. One of them being a very old folk song in Bengali called Kolankini Radha, which is the villagers' gaze on this, again, a mythological character, Radha, and her love story with another mythological character called Krishna, and how the villagers have a say in what it should look like and what it should not. So all of those kind of little texts, little things that I grew up with, media interventions, all of that was like sort of the driving force behind it.
So I think you said this started in 2019, is that right?
Yes, yes.
So are you constantly kind of evolving it over the years, finding new texts, finding new ideas behind it?
Yeah, I think in 2019, I was doing it more as a student. So I was studying more and more for like in the research form of having to
Yeah.
defend the thesis eventually, right? So I was reading, watching, experiencing things as and when they were happening. But then I think with time, there has been a lot more that has come my way with other projects that I was doing because a lot of them have similar themes.
Mhm.
So reading more texts through that, having more and more conversations with people about things. And I have two collaborators, Jairus, who is the dramaturg, Ankana, who's the musician, and having the same conversations with them and hearing their perspectives on the same feelings and how they experience this world. So I suppose text wise, after Draupadi, there was like a small halt in terms of adding more text to it. But then it kind of evolved more through people's experiences, the collaborators, the sharings that I did, and the people who came to the sharings and their experiences and the way we spoke about it. So then it started becoming a collective group conversation, sort of, and that evolved in how the project developed eventually.
I know when we spoke previously that, collaboration with others was a really important part of what you do.
Yeah.
So, although this started out as a kind of personal academic exercise, the collaboration has really grown it.
Absolutely, yes. And I think, for example, the script for the live performance, which is like the spoken word, Jairus and Ankana have such a strong support with that. And we sat together, we spoke about things, even like to just think about what each sentence can sort of signify for different people, to making sure that all of these stories are told with care. And I think they were really, really important in that process. And the films, I collaborated with another artist named Mia Schmidt. She's from London, and we met during our masters. So we were both doing masters in the same university. And we started, so she helped me make some of the films when I was doing the research. And then when we made the final films for this project, she was still the filmmaker. So again, her view of her looking at this and her way of thinking about the edits and the cuts, and which are not similar to mine, I think they kind of changed the perspective quite a lot for me. So yeah, it was very, very rich for me to have all of these people around.
And it sounds like it's a very rich event, if you like, because there is a lot of these different aspects to it. You have the music and you have this interactive element as well. And I guess sometimes people will be looking and sometimes they will be reflecting.
Absolutely.
There's different aspects of gazing, if you like.
Yes, yes. And I think the initial thing when I started doing the installation, it was a very basic path I made where I was doing a residency in dance space. It was literally a small path made of random things because it
Right.
was just an R&D. And I think one of the important things for me was to like sort of put tiny instructions that people have to follow that when they're in that space, even if it's just like blink 3 times, or where do they turn, or maybe like do a couple of turns. And obviously I've made it more accessible as time has passed, but it was just to be like, sometimes when we are in a social construct, we choose or not choose to follow and be there. So somehow just giving that tiny space a feeling of we are all in a social construct at this moment. And probably you're looking at yourself doing these things, but you're also looking at the other person. Are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? So that kind of a relationship that you make with the other people in the audience.
And let's talk about audiences and what can they expect when they go through the doors. What are they confronted with, and what's the setup?
So I think one thing for me is it can be a little daunting experience to walk into something that is so interactive, and you, as soon as you come in, you're part of the performance. So there is a bit of a program that they read through. They read about what they are going to come into, but in a very narrative story sort of form, like not just the blurb or something. So they're listening, they're talking about Draupadi as like, you're going to enter into Draupadi's world, and this is who Draupadi is. This is why you are entering into this world, etc. So they're kind of aware of what's going to happen. And obviously, there are going to be people who are going to support them, tell them that you're going to walk through if you want to. If you don't want to, you can sit out. And what they see is essentially a space set up in form of a path with red fabric in
Mhm.
both the sides. And they walk through that tunnel sort of space. And as they walk through, they see these tiny instruction sheets for them to either follow or not, and a path laid out for them. And the path is open from both the sides, and they walk through. There's a bit of time to just be there and experience things that are laid out around for you. There is obviously the films that you watch. It involves you, but it's also not in a way that you have to
Yeah.
really be responding to everything at that moment. You can take your time. You cannot respond. You can just watch the films and be a passive observer in that moment. Or you can actually step out and just watch other people do the process and not really be in it. So it's that kind of an experience. And once that part of the thing is over, everybody goes and sits in the raked seating to
Right.
just watch the story unfold between the two friends.
And we've spoken about the music. Is that live music when it's happening?
So there is two aspects to the music as well. So there's music with the films,
Mhm.
and by music I mean it's more like a soundscape. So for example, for one of the films is just all the words that are written on my body spoken in different languages, which is not English,
Right.
and from different parts of the world, and spoken in native people's tongue. So people who actually speak the language have recorded that. So some things you might understand, sometimes you might not understand those things. We had experience like somebody who speaks Polish was in one of the audiences during a sharing, and they said that somehow the moment they heard it in their language, it started making more and more impact on them.
Mm.
So that kind of experience with that soundscape. Then there is a poem by Rabia Balki, who was an Afghani poet and was killed in imprisonment. And
Right.
this was the last poem that she wrote on the wall as she passed. So that is there, but it's given, there's like a slight music undertone to the poem. It's spoken word, but with a little bit of music undertone. And then some of them is Indian classical rhythmic syllables, etc. So that is with the film, like a bit of soundscape. But when it comes to the live performance, it essentially is like me and Ankana, we are rehearsing for a performance. So she sings, she makes mistakes, we fix it. It's that kind of live interaction in that moment.
And we say this is going to be the premiere at the Tramway on Saturday. But have you performed it already to an audience?
So we've done sharings before
Right.
to just very small invited audiences. So the first sharing, as I said, was bare bones.
Right.
It had no live performance. It had some of my old films that I was using which I made from my phone in 2020. So those kind of things that existed at that time. So that was one set of it, and we had about 5 people who came and watched it. Then in 2023, I did a longer R&D process, and it was again shared at Dance Space. At that time, we had more people, but it was again not really open to people, like open public.
Yeah.
It was again people who are more for peer feedback, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it was people who have been engaging with artwork or have been engaging with my work previously, so just for feedback. But it is for the first time going to audiences who might also be new to my work
Yeah.
and might do not engage with South Asian contemporary work as much. So yeah.
So it'll be interesting for you on the night to see just how things
Yes,
unfold because and I guess whenever you bring in interaction, it'll be different every night.
absolutely. Yes, and that is something I'm excited and scared about, but let's see. Let's see how that works around, and we'll find out. It's also probably the first time we're opening it to as many people as it's open to, like about 40 people. And we have thought of having people walk through different sides of the path. Normally, we just did one path. And yeah, let's see how people experience it. So there is a post-show discussion.
Right.
It won't be long, it will be probably 10 minutes, but it still gives people the space to sort of process what has happened. Maybe if they have any questions for me and Ankana, they can ask us those questions. If they don't, if they just have thoughts that they want to share, that is a possibility to experience all of that in that moment.
In terms of how the performance is going to be, were there other performances or people perhaps who inspired you, I guess more generally in your work?
So when I was doing this in 2019, there was a performance I saw by Jerome Bell. It was staged in a Paris Opera House, and it's not like I did not see it. I saw a video of it as part of one of my lectures, and it started with a ballerina who comes on stage not to perform, but to actually talk about what her experience of being a ballerina is, and her experiences and stuff. And I think that kind of looking at what happens behind the stage and what dancers experience in terms of how they're chosen for specific roles, how is their career going, and what is their financial stage. All of that was very powerful for me to have a look at, and it felt like it's important. It's important to put this out. So that kind of really inspired me to sort of make something that strips down the process of creating a performance. And when I did it in Inside Out, there was also, or even like the previous sharing, there was a concept of breaking the fourth wall and actually talking to the audience in the live performance. I have come back from that right now because as it evolved, it does not feel like I need to have the conversation with audience while I'm performing, and maybe that conversation can happen later.
Right.
But yeah, I think that was one of the really strong images that stayed with me, with just one artist coming and talking about their experiences of being a dancer. Other than that, I think I have like sort of seen and spoken about, heard from, I'm not very good with names off the bat, but a lot of interactive performances, or especially performances that kind of give you the space to not just be an audience member who comes to watch it, but to actually experience as it happens, usually leaves me slightly more involved in the project.
Okay.
And it wasn't just artists who've been doing this for years, it was also my peers in my university who did this kind of work. So I did notice how much that draws me in to be part of the process. So at this point, it seems quite important for me to involve the audience in it. And let's see how they respond, and maybe things will change later. But yeah,
I think that's interesting. That's the breaking of the fourth wall, which is usually someone on stage speaking directly to the audience. But in this sense, what you're doing is breaking it by inviting the audience onto the
into the
stage,
space.
if you like, into your
Yes.
space. Yeah, exactly. Into the performance space.
Yeah, I think it's I do like the idea of sometimes audience becoming the makers,
Hmm.
but also with the space of it should not become a lot.
Yeah.
It should not feel like they came to a performance and all they're doing is performing themselves. So with that kind of the the bridge between that space, and maybe sometimes some audience would love it, but perhaps I personally cannot hold a space like that.
Yeah.
So that is the reason that I don't want to take that risk as of now,
Yeah.
currently. But yeah, to give them that space to also maybe like, especially when you're doing something, at least for myself, like when I'm doing something which comes from somebody's internal monologue, somebody's internal ideas, I wanted to create a space that for some time you feel like you are actually seeing their space, and it's not just a story you're hearing. You're
Yeah.
hearing the backdrop of what happens. And perhaps when you're in there, you look at things and you will be like, oh, I have this. Oh, I also do this. Maybe you'll see a post-it written on the mirror with some instructions, and you'll be like, that's exactly what I do for myself. So that kind of relationality is also something I am looking forward to. But
Yeah.
again, we won't know how it works until it does.
That's, yeah. But that idea of kind of not just being a passive audience member, I think is quite an exciting thing. But I guess you don't want people going away thinking they've done all the work.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I asked you this the last time we spoke, but how did you come to choreography and dance? What was your kind of road towards it?
Um, it's a very I wouldn't say interesting, but it's a typical story. So to be very honest, I started dancing when I was 4.
Mhm.
I started training when I was 4, and
Right.
I just was dancing in my house constantly. So, as a person who grew up in an Indian household, listening to Bollywood music was constant in my house. And some of the most famous dance choreographies that we still really think they were really great for their time were happening when I was like probably just like 3 or 4. So
Mhm.
they were on the TV in front of me all the time. So I was the kind of child who was like copying all of that. And then my parents were like, okay, we're going to send you to the classical dance class. There you go. But I don't think there was ever a possibility to think about a future or a career from at least the space I lived in for the longest time
Okay.
until there was like a reality TV show in India, the first dance reality TV show that came in 2009. And looking at some of the people in that, I realized there's a possibility to study this and think about this as a future and go longer into it than just having to probably become part of a film industry which does this dance.
Sure.
So that's when I started like training further, I trained in jazz with a company in India, and I studied Bharatanatyam. That was a form that I used to do before. And then I did my undergraduate degree in choreography in a university, which was the only university in India that gives you that
Okay.
like it's the only course that exists in India. There's there's no master's, there's no other bachelor's degree in choreography that you can do. So it was literally the only space. But I remember when I was looking for these courses, you can do degrees in dance forms.
Mhm.
Like you could study a bachelor's degree in Bharatanatyam or in Kathak, which are the classical dance forms. But there was a part of me that always knew that I'm more of a choreographer than a performer. Like I like creating things than being in things created by other people because that's how my brain works. So I think that was the first step of self-awareness of being like, I would like to create things all my life. And that's where the journey started. So about in 2012 is when I started that course. And since then, it's just been meeting new people, learning new things, figuring out what I want, what I like, finding my own language, and the course has been going on.
And you've got to be at the Tramway and then you're going to Edinburgh, but are there plans for other performances?
As of now, no. I think this is taking a lot of my space for that. So, for now, yes, this is it. This is 21st of November, 22nd of November is Tramway, 28th of February is Capitol Theatres in the studio. There might be news from the company I work with, Theiya Arts, but we're still like, there's nothing in the calendar yet, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, because the last time we spoke to you, it was about Theiya Arts. It was Maiden Mother Whore, wasn't it? That was the
Yes,
film that
yes,
you were
yes.
doing as well. So you're still working with them and still doing.
Absolutely. So I am currently one of the core team members of Theiya Arts, and we received multi-year funding recently from Creative Scotland, so that's going well. But yeah, performances wise, we're still planning our life around the Maiden Mother Whore. Maiden Mother Whore is going to come back, but when and how, that is still in works.
And in terms of the gays, we should really let people know where they can find out more and where they can get tickets.
Absolutely. So for the tickets to Tramway, you can find them on Tramway's website. For tickets to Capitol Theatres, they're not out yet, but they will be soon again on their website. And if you want to find out more about the project, about me, there's my Instagram
Yeah.
with my name, and I run it with another friend, another colleague slash friend of mine. So it's called Himadri Nandini, and my website at Himadri Madan choreography.co.uk. So you can find all the information you need there.
Himadri, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you about this fascinating piece of theatre. All the very best with it.
Thank you so much, Alistair. Thank you for having me. It's been fun talking to you again. It was really nice. Thank you.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.